as it moved from coast to coast. At least 12 people killed and dozens others injured. The storm making landfall shortly after 8:30 as a Category 3 hurricane in Siesta Key, that's just south of Sarasota. The hurricane battering the region with violent winds and quickly inundating the area. There was a powerful storm surge. We were caught in the crosshairs of the hurricane and had to run for cover. And the situation here in Sarasota is starting to turn dire. At first we had, okay, we're gonna go, we gotta go. Morning revealing Milton's devastation, the barrier islands taking the brunt of it, homes knocked off their foundation and streets filled with feet of sand. Tampa, which was bracing for the worst storm in a century, was spared of a direct hit, but neighborhoods were washed out and roads were left impassable. Area airports were hit hard, and in Sarasota, we saw some of it up close. The roofs were blown off hangars and planes were flipped. Officials are working to assess the damage and see when they can get service back up and running. In St. Petersburg, 100-mile-an-hour winds sent a construction crane flying into an office building, that crane demolishing parts of the building, collapsing onto the sidewalk. Hundreds of rescues unfolding all across the state. A teen found floating on a fence, a young boy clinging onto the back of a first responder, and countless others saved from rising floodwaters. And there is dramatic new video of the moment a destructive tornado tore through St. Lucie County. Power lines, debris, and trees launched into the air. Dozens of monster twisters caught people off guard as they whipped through several communities. In a moment, we'll hear from one man who spotted a tornado moments before it hit his home and it hit his vehicle. Video showing the destruction, cars flipped upside down, homes ripped apart, and residents left with a mangled mess. Florida shattering records for the number of tornado warnings issued in a single day. Tonight, nearly 3 million customers are without power. Officials warning it could be days, if not weeks, before the lights are back on. We're covering it all tonight from coast to coast, but we start with the ongoing search for survivors amid that tornado outbreak.
This is the terrifying moment a massive tornado ripped through Fort Pierce. Look at the debris spinning into the air.
Oh, violent tornado.
And this video capturing a twister in Palm Beach Gardens. Look at how quickly and violently it envelops this house, sending debris flying and blowing out the windows. Both tornadoes part of a deadly outbreak spawned by Hurricane Milton.
We are very, very saddened to see a tornado inflict such serious damage, including loss of life.
According to initial reports, at least 38 tornadoes touched down. The twisters flipping semi-trucks, tearing down trees, and reducing homes to piles of rubble.
This wind came through here. If Michael had not grabbed that door and closed it, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here.
In St. Lucie County on Florida's East Coast, a tornado tore through a retirement community, killing at least 6 people, including Debbie Kennedy. Her daughter telling us she was an incredible mother and caregiver.
This is a 100% rescue mission.
Today, Sheriff Keith Pearson telling us they are still searching for survivors.
And unfortunately, our death toll has gone up. We're up to 6 right now, but I'm hoping we're able to rescue some more people.
You ever seen anything like this?
Never, never. This is the last thing that I could expect. I don't think our community has ever seen anything like this. You know, we've been through hurricanes before. This was nothing like that. It's a complete devastation. I mean, cars, trailers, where there were homes, they weren't. They were lifted up, they were moved, they were crumbled.
Those that survived look like this. Boris Melboff can't believe he's alive.
Truck started to roll over and it stopped, and then once again.
He's covered in stitches all over his arms and up his face.
Fingers. Two more cuts here.
He says he never saw the tornado until his truck started flipping.
Leaves started to fly, something hit the truck.
Pretty powerful to roll over your truck, right?
Yeah.
You'll never forget that, huh?
No.
HCA Florida Lawnwood Hospital took in 15 patients with tornado-related injuries, some with broken bones, others that needed brain surgery.
Most of these are blunt traumas to the head and chest, abdomen, and some of them had other fractures because they got hit directly by some flying objects and debris.
What did the patients tell you? Were they taken completely by surprise?
They were, and it was like they themselves, they didn't know what happened. Most of them, they just felt like a lot of wind hit the place, and all of a sudden something catastrophic happened for them.
This was an incredibly traumatic situation.
It is.
Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis has provided search and rescue teams to this community. The sheriff tells me it's unclear how many people they lost because in that retirement community, a lot of people, it's their second home and they may have been away. They're snowbirds or they may have evacuated. So they're still unclear if they're searching for survivors. For more on the rescue and recovery efforts here in St. Lucie County, the communications director for the area, Eric Gill, joins Top Story Live now. Eric, talk to me about what happened here. I mean, I know it took your community by surprise. You were waiting for this hurricane, and then suddenly you have this tornado outbreak.
Yeah, absolutely. We, in a span of about 2 hours, we had 900 calls into our emergency operations center about the tornado activity.
900 calls.
900 calls in a 2-hour span. We had reportedly at least 12 tornadoes touch down. There were 2 that were confirmed by the National Weather Service. They'll have crews out tomorrow to confirm the others. And some of those tornadoes were massive. You've seen the videos. They look like they're half a mile wide.
Did you guys realize at the time what was happening?
Yeah, I mean, we were getting the alerts that were pushed out by the National Weather Service and the calls coming in and the videos that we were seeing. You really didn't know how bad it was until you had time, you know, to the storms, to the thunderstorms and the tornadoes pass through, and you had time to go out and really assess.
When you see the damage like this, what do you think?
It's devastating, you know, and we've seen areas where, you know, one side of the street, the house is fine, and other areas it looks like this.
Yeah, you know, the sheriff told me they're still searching for survivors. They're working around the clock. Talk to me about that effort.
Well, like you said, you know, some of these people may have been out of town, their second home. They may have left the area, gone and stayed with friends. There's still some spotty cell phone service, so maybe they just haven't checked in with loved ones yet. Yeah. But we know at least 6 people were killed yesterday in these storms.
In some of these videos, we see the twister pass through, especially when it comes to the vehicles that were flipped over. And regular people just stopped. Good Samaritans, they pulled, you know, their fellow residents out of these vehicles to save them. They took them to the hospital in some regards. Is this community now coming together to try to help?
I think it always has. I've lived here 25 years, and 20 years ago, Francis and Jean were 2 hurricanes that devastated this area, and we saw those communities come together and help neighbors out, and we're seeing that again.
Eric Gill, we thank you for being here. We'll be thinking about your community, and we'll be reporting on this throughout the broadcast and in the weeks ahead.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. And, of course, in addition to those deadly tornadoes, the sheer force of the Category 3 hurricane, Hurricane Milton, did massive damage across Florida, millions losing power and floods devastating neighborhoods. NBC Nightly News anchor Lester Holt has this report from Siesta Key, where the hurricane made landfall.
Tonight, this is Hurricane Milton's path of destruction. In hard-hit Manasota Key, homes ripped apart and pushed off their foundations. Debris everywhere. The damage along Florida's already battered Gulf Coast extensive, though not nearly as catastrophic as originally feared.
The storm was significant, but thankfully this was not the worst-case scenario.
At least 12 people are dead. Millions of homes and businesses are without power on Florida's East Coast.
Oh!
A string of deadly tornadoes flattened buildings.
Walked outside and annihilated. The neighborhood annihilated.
In St. Petersburg, Milton's ferocious winds caused this crane to collapse, crashing into an office building. At Tropicana Field, the home of the Tampa Bay Rays, the massive fabric roof ripped off, now in tatters on the field. It had been used as a base camp for responders pre-storm. About 14 people were inside at the time. All are safe. The storm tossed boats on their sides, and trees crashed through homes.
We heard a screeching noise, and it came outside, and we seen the branch in the front yard.
Category 3 Milton made landfall last night near Sarasota, dumping 18 inches of rain in some places and packing 100-mile-an-hour winds, ripping roofs from homes.
And there it goes.
Sending debris flying through the air, causing transformers to explode.
Whoa!
And fires to break out. Storm surge pushed water through neighborhoods. In Tampa, police rescued 15 people from a single-story home, including several children.
It's okay, Bubba. It's okay.
Hundreds more rescues today, including this 14-year-old found floating on debris. A Coast Guard helicopter crew rescuing this man whose boat was disabled in the water, clinging to a cooler. NBC's Chase Kane is in Daytona Beach.
The Volusia County Sheriff has a Marine unit for exactly this kind of thing, using airboats to evacuate people to safety because the rain fell so quickly and more than 15 inches, it cut off entire communities, trapping people in their homes.
Today, I met up with the fire chief of Sarasota County. We traveled to Siesta Key, the barrier island where Milton made landfall. I was with him as he returned on the ground for the first time since the storm. As we drove onto the island, we found downed trees and flooded streets.
Have you seen a lot of flooding like what we're looking at here?
Yes, and as you go further and further north on the barrier islands, because it's a little lower down there, the water depth is a little worse.
Yeah, the chief breathed a sigh of relief. Siesta Key was largely spared.
We just drove through these flooded neighborhoods and trees down. Were you anticipating it would be worse than that?
We were. By the grace of God, the predictions and what we had planned for did not come to fruition. But obviously, if you are a resident or business owner out here, I don't want to minimize it. This is very impactful to the community, but it could have been much, much, much worse.
Lucky is not to be confused with untouched. This is Siesta Key, where the eye of the storm first came ashore. Many of the homes in this community are totally surrounded by water hours after the storm's landfall.
Tonight, Milton has left the Gulf Coast behind, but many are just beginning the difficult work of cleaning up after a major storm for the second time in less than 2 weeks.
And Tom, officials say they were working in rescue mode today, but they will do a further look to really understand just how bad this storm really was. Let's turn it back to you now.
All right, Lester, we thank you for that. And on those rescues over in Tampa, first responders rushing to save hundreds of people submerged in high floodwaters. Some neighborhoods now underwater in areas miles from Florida's coast. Stephanie Gosk is there at the water rescues that are underway.
In Central Florida, a race to pull people out of the water, not from a dangerous storm surge, but from Milton's torrential rains. This woman escaping the rising waters in the dark, her 4 young children in tow.
Once we hopped on the oven, I called my mom and told my mom, I think me and my children are about to drown to death.
Many of the neighborhoods underwater are miles from the coast and not typically flood prone.
How long did you live down there?
I lived there 14 years.
Did you ever see it flood?
No, ma'am. Nothing like that.
The County Fire Rescue in Tampa says it conducted 500 rescues. 135 people were pulled from a single assisted living facility.
Please be careful. If you feel better, go on the dry ground. We can take you there.
Amphibious vehicles and marine units helped reach inundated homes.
Rescue workers got here around 3:30 in the morning. Soon afterwards, they found this woman in the green sweatshirt alone in her house. She has a hard time seeing. The front door to her house was broken, and they couldn't convince her to come out. She was scared. They finally, this afternoon at 1 o'clock, got her out and got her to safety.
Milton's heaviest rain dropped over its northern edge, in some places falling more than 2 inches in an hour, with historic totals, leaving residents in this apartment building in Pinellas trapped. Hundreds had to be rescued.
A lot of credit to our teams that were out there today.
Even with all that warning, the strength of Hurricane Milton still took many here by surprise.
All right, Stephanie Goss joins us now live from Hillsborough County. Stephanie, do authorities have any idea how long it could take for these floodwaters to recede?
You know, they were telling me, Tom, that here in this area, it could take a few days. And I can tell you that right now, they're actually still rescuing people. We've been watching boats go in and out and getting people out of inundated homes. They're still getting calls from people who perhaps have been in the house all day thinking the waters were going to recede, and they didn't. And the prospect of spending a night in a flooded house was too much. We just talked to a crew that was going in to get a family with 2 kids, Tom.
Yeah, no, it is heartbreaking seeing those children that had to be rescued. Stephanie, I know you've covered a few storms, and a lot of these rescues remind me of Hurricane Harvey and all the rescues that had to happen there. How widespread of a problem do you think this is right now in Hillsborough County?
Well, we know that there are at least 2 locations in Hillsborough County. And Hillsborough County, by the way, is huge. It's the size of Rhode Island. But we know that there are neighborhoods like this one. And Tom, this is a low-income neighborhood. They're not in an evacuation area. They thought they were going to be safe here. And these are people that are going to be out of their houses with really no place to go in a city that doesn't have a lot of space for them. It is going to be a real problem in the coming days and weeks for Tampa.
Yeah, the shelters are full. It is not cheap to evacuate, and now people have lost yet another week of work as well on top of all of this. All right, Stephanie Goss, we appreciate all your reporting and your team's reporting as well. We thank you for that. Right off the coast of Florida, residents living on barrier islands reeling from Milton's impact. Homes and neighborhoods completely rocked as efforts to rebuild start back once again. Sam Brock has more tonight.
In southwest Florida tonight, full-scale devastation.
My daughter, man, she just started screaming through the house, you know, and I jumped up. And when I ran out, the same time I ran out, the door come flying to meet me, man.
And heartache along the beach. A multi-year rebuild stunted again by a hurricane.
It's heart-wrenching to have to keep going through this, but in all honesty, like, all of our friends are here on this block. I think we all give each other the strength to continue.
On the streets of Fort Myers Beach, evacuated for days, Mayor Dan Allers showing us what it looks like this morning. Storm surge saturating the same neighborhoods devastated 2 years ago by Hurricane Ian.
We're an island of doers. You know, these things punch you in the gut, but you just pick up. We've had some residents that this is the fourth time they'll be rebuilding their house.
This is an example of one of the homes rebuilt after Hurricane Ian. And while it might not look that bad, you have to consider it was sitting on a 12-foot pylon and came all the way down off its foundation. Barrier islands up and down Florida's coast, often the most vulnerable to violent winds and surging waters. Many still inaccessible, but authorities have shared pictures of buckled roads on Captiva Island and homes burning on Matlacha, an archipelago of paradise, all evacuated.
They left, they listened, and now we'll hopefully within a day or day and a half, 2 days at the most, be able to get them back into their homes where they could start rebuilding again.
Sam Brock joins us tonight from Sanibel's Causeway. Sam, at the beginning there, you mentioned that curfew tonight for residents on Sanibel Island. Do we know why?
Yeah, so it starts at 9 o'clock p.m., goes to 6 a.m. If you look behind me, Tom, you'll see the checkpoints. Why is that going on? Sanibel Island right now has no water, no power. Authorities here say there's a critical piece of infrastructure. They have to fly onto the island to sort of recatalyze all of that. They're worried and warning residents that if you were to try to use your water, you could get sewage backed up in their homes. So that certainly explains why they're trying to be cautious. As far as why a curfew would be in place, presumably they just don't want people roaming around these streets where there's all these homes with no power, no anything. And we've obviously heard tales of looting and people doing untoward things in moments of crisis like this. That's the best that I can possibly imagine why they're cutting it off. But there's also a curfew in place for Sanibel when they had already evacuated the entire island. So we'll leave that to the folks that are making these decisions. But the reality right now, folks have been lining up all day trying to get in to see what their properties look like. It was true here. Tom, it was also true on Fort Myers Beach.
You know, Sam, I know those areas very well. I grew up going to those beaches at Sanibel and Captiva. They're some of the best areas of Florida, some of the most beautiful areas of Florida, but they thrive off tourism. Can you give us more context about what these back-to-back-to-back hurricanes mean for a community like where you are tonight?
Gosh, that's such a good point, because I remember touring Sanibel Island, and I'm glad there's so many people out there like you who say they went with their grandparents or their families for years, not just in Florida, but really across the country. Sanibel Island is just this special little gem. And there's hotels that have stood there for 100+ years that just got decimated completely. I remember talking to the mayor at the time and saying, this is going to cost us millions of dollars, not to mention what it means for the residents that take such refuge in living there. The economic impacts are going to be felt for a very long time. They have started to rebuild, but I can't get on the island to see how far along they've come in those efforts. But there's no doubt it was a dent economically for sure.
Sam Brock, part of our team last night that worked through the night covering Hurricane Milton's landfall in that area and all over the Gulf Coast of Florida. Sam, we thank you for your reporting. Hurricane Milton, so massive in scale and so devastating to the communities there. To put this hurricane in perspective, NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns joins me now. He's been covering the storm from the get-go. Bill, walk us through the historic nature of Milton and also tell me tonight what surprised you about this hurricane.
Yeah, so every hurricane is unique. And, we have these predictions. We know what we think is going to happen. And sometimes they're perfect. And sometimes, things happen that are a lot worse than we think. I mean, no one thought that western North Carolina was going to look the way it does now after Helene. So with this storm, that it's now exiting, gone, all the weather effects are done. One of the things that surprised us was the storm surge. It appears it was the lower end of the projections. We heard a lot of stuff about catastrophic, historic. Well, one reason why, this was last night about this time as we were having landfall. Notice the southern port of the eye. There's no thunderstorms. There's no rain. That's what mixes the strong winds down to the ground. Those strong winds over the ocean surface push the surge in. Without those thunderstorms, we didn't have the surge at the upper levels. We still had some bad surge. We still had 5 to 6 feet from Naples to Fort Myers. We're still waiting for the official reports of how high the surge were for the barrier islands outside of Venice, south of Sarasota, and down by Inglewood. They were likely in the 5 to 10 foot range. Helene was roughly right around 6 to 7 feet in these areas. So a tiny bit of additional destruction, but it wasn't catastrophic like wiping homes off the map. So that's good for people to come home. Hopefully they can try to repair that. Another thing that was an overachiever, probably worse than we were expecting, was the rainfall. St. Petersburg had 18 inches of rain with the storm. And last night, during this hour, or a little after this, 8 to 9 p.m., 5 inches of rain. So that qualified as a 1 in 1,000 year flood event. I mean, that was an historic amount of rain. And then the tornadoes. This produced some of the largest, strongest tornadoes you'll ever see with a landfalling hurricane. And that's why we had those fatalities. I mean, everywhere in the eastern portion yesterday, people still can't believe how strong those tornadoes were. Some of the strongest they've ever experienced in southeast and eastern half of the state. And then the winds, this was as expected. You get a major hurricane making landfall, going across the busy I-4 corridor, Venice Beach, 107, 104, 102 in Sarasota. And that's why we still have roughly about 3 million people without power. So, Tom, in some ways, the rainfall, we had a lot of inland people that needed rescuing, water in homes and apartments. That was worse. The storm surge wasn't quite as bad, but, we've had 3 hurricanes now. We had Debbie, Helene, and Milton. And, of course, the last 2 were in 13-day separation. We don't want to add any more lines to this map, Tom. It would be nice if Florida can be done for this tropical season.
Well, that leads me to my next question, Bill, right? And I do have to ask you, are we out of the woods just yet when it comes to hurricanes in the U.S.?
Yeah, the calendar says that hurricane season goes to the end of November. But in reality, the destructive storms are usually in the month of October. It's very rare to get one in November. That leaves us about 3 more weeks. I can tell you there's nothing on the horizon in the next 7 days. So we all get to catch our breath. By the time we get to the end of next week, maybe the week after that, there could be something trying to spin up in the Caribbean, which is the favorite time of year and the favorite place. But nothing that's imminent, Tom. We all can get a little step back here and try to catch our breath.
All right, I hope you're right. Bill, we thank you for everything you did last night as well, walking us and guiding us through the night. Many residents choosing to ride out the storm inside their home. One of those residents is Trenton Knepp. His Sarasota County home rocked by the 1-2 punch of Helene and now Milton. He joins us live tonight. So, Trenton, talk to us about what you experienced last night. I know this is an incredibly difficult time, so thank you for talking to us tonight.
Yeah, last night we had lots of wind. It was a major wind event, but my biggest issue was the storm surge. My home flooded during Helene. We've been there over 20 years, and now it flooded again yesterday. We've got sewage in the house. It's a complete disaster.
Were you surprised by what Hurricane Milton brought, or did you think this is what it was going to be like?
It just seems like we're having more and more storms. It's out of control. My wife and I purchased our home when we were in our 20s. We've been there ever since. We've never had anything near this. It's just 2 really bad ones right back to back. I'm a commercial fisherman, and we've just been getting beat up nonstop from regulation and everything. It's just like one more sucker punch to the face. But we're just trying to overcome and know that it's God's will, whatever happens.
So we see what happened to your house during Helene. What happened during Milton? Because it looked like your first floor was sort of taken out by that storm surge or by the flooding.
Right. Yeah, we got flooded with Helene, and then we got a pod. We put all of our belongings that didn't get flooded into the pod, and we couldn't get enough stuff out in time. And so the stuff that we saved from Helene, a little bit of stuff that we did salvage, now it got flooded from Milton. So it's Helene, it was clean water. Milton, it's a lot of dirty water. We have a lot of sludge. It smells like sewage. I'm pretty sure it is sewage. And under the FEMA 50% law, it doesn't look like we're going to be allowed to repair the home. That we'll have to have it bulldozed. And I don't think we have enough insurance money to do that.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. I know insurance is such a problem for homeowners in the state of Florida. It's gotten so high because of these hurricanes and other factors as well. So you're going to have to bulldoze your home. Where do you go from there? Do you have enough money to rebuild?
It's going to be, we thought we were overinsured, but I've been talking to some builders and it looks like we're going to be possibly up to $250,000 short, which is more money than we paid for the house when we bought it. And, you know, we're too old to take on another mortgage. But with my job, I have to have that home to fish out of the dock under government regulations. We're not allowed to unload our fish after 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So if you don't have a private dock to go to, you're pretty much screwed and you can't do day trips, which is what I do with my commercial grouper and snapper fishing.
And I can't imagine, you know, you've been losing all this work because you've been working on your house, but you also can't go out and fish when there's a hurricane in the ocean.
Yeah, right. I also do stone crabbing. Our traps were supposed to have went in the water on October 5th. Then they sit for 10 days till you pull them. And we've just been trying to recover from one storm to another. And it's like, now I need to get my traps in the water, but I'm concerned, is this next storm going to hit us again? Are there going to be crabs? Like after Ian hit, Fort Myers had no crabs for a solid year. It just beats them up. And like, I don't know if there's even going to be any crabs there to catch. The fishing should still be there. It's just fishing's a hard way to make a living.
Trenton, I'm sorry this is happening to you. We're going to be thinking about you and your family. I hope you find a home, are able to rebuild one, and eventually the only thing you're worrying about is tight lines in the water. We thank you for talking to us tonight.
If anybody could check me out on TikTok, Instagram, it's under Advanced Crab and Seafood. I would appreciate all the follows and the likes. We live stream from offshore, so we'll be running live stream all day long, 12 hours a day, doing what we do, loving our job.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.